President Fox, esteemed faculty, family members, friends, and most of all, graduates. Thank you for this opportunity to be your commencement speaker. I'm thrilled to be here, but I have to confess to having had some hesitation when the invitation was first issued. This is a big day for you. You're about to walk across the stage and receive a doctoral diploma from one of the top 10 public universities in the country. You deserve a speaker commensurate with the significance of that achievement. Someone like Bill Gates or Condoleezza Rice, Steve Spurrier, or that most famous of all commencement speakers, believe it or not, Amy Poehler. That's the kind of speaker you should have, I thought. But then I realized I can offer something that most of those people could not. Solidarity of experience. I have been exactly where you're sitting now, and I got there the way that many of you probably did. Probably like you, my path to a doctorate was unplanned. I am quite certain that when 10-year-old me was asked what I wanted to do when I grew up, I did not respond by saying that I wanted to spend the majority of my waking hours in a windowless laboratory, poring over numbers, checking the calibration of my equipment, or rewriting that grant proposal one more time. Yet, with the advantage of hindsight, I realize that's exactly how 10-year-old me would have responded had I known what a rewarding career this would turn out to be. You might say that my path to a doctorate started by volunteering here at the William Penn Community Center in Levittown, Pennsylvania, on Saturday afternoons when I was 12 years old. The community center offered activities for children with a variety of disabilities. While all these children were special, I was especially drawn to the quiet ones, the children who either could not easily understand others or could not easily make themselves understood. They just seemed so alone. It wouldn't be until years later, after I developed an interest in the life of Helen Keller, that I would have that impression validated by learning that she herself had once said that of her two sensory impairments, deafness was the more debilitating. Because while blindness separates us from things, deafness separates us from people. Over the years, my interest in children with communication disorders grew. And my first job as an adult was teaching deaf children. Here are a couple of those children. Even with the best interventions of the time, this is what they sounded like. At this point, I decided to make it the goal of my career to help design better interventions so that all deaf children could learn spoken language and communicate with everyone around them. So something that had started as an interest in childhood blossomed into a passion in adulthood. You probably have a similar story. If you're getting a PhD in geology today, perhaps as a child you had a rock collection. Maybe a secret rock collection that you hid under your bed so your mother wouldn't find it and scold you for bringing those dirty rocks into her clean house. Whatever it is, something for you started as an interest and grew into a passion. So here you sit. It's because of that similarity in experience that I eventually decided I could be your commencement speaker. So, with that decision behind me, my next challenge was figuring out how to put together a commencement address. You see, I've never given one before. So, faced with that challenge, I did what any good scientist would do. I Googled it. It turns out there's no lack of advice on the internet about how to put together a commencement address. So I perused a number of these sites, selected what I considered to be the 5 best, and figured I could easily choose among those later. But then that task turned out to be harder than I anticipated. So I had to employ yet another tried and true scientific method. I closed my eyes and randomly picked one, So now I had my online instruction manual, and regardless of how I got it, I committed myself completely to following those instructions. The site I selected recommends that there are 5 cardinal rules to putting together a commencement address. So I will now walk us all through those 5 rules so that on this momentous occasion, you will know that you have been the recipients of the perfect commencement address. Ready? Here we go. Cardinal rule number 1, be funny. When I realized that was the first rule, I immediately had to question my selection methods. But being totally committed, I set about trying to find a way to follow that rule. And after a great deal of thought, I concluded I was just going to have to nail the other 4. So, cardinal rule number 2, have a clear message. At this point, I was close to panic. What is the just right message for a commencement address? I didn't know. So, I went back to the internet, this time watching dozens of addresses by other speakers, hoping to glean a common theme across them all. Well, it turns out that there are 2 common themes to these addresses. According to the first, I'm supposed to tell you how very special you are, having accomplished this achievement completely on your own. You're 1 in a million. Well, actually 3 in 100, 3%. That's how many adults in the country have doctorates. According to the other theme, I'm supposed to tell you that now that you have this degree, you should follow your dreams, no matter where they may lead, no matter how esoteric or financially unproductive they may be. The only problem is that the whole time that I was watching these online addresses, just one refrain kept going through my head, and that was, congratulations, now get to work. And there are 2 reasons I think that refrain kept popping into my head. First, yes, this is a wonderful achievement, no doubt about it. But your best decision really was in selecting the University of Florida at which to pursue your doctoral studies. Because once here, you were guided and supported by the best minds in your field. And the other reason is that now that you have this degree, we need you. Never before has our very civilization faced such serious and frankly existential threats. Granted, many of these threats are of our own making. For example, some of you, especially back here, may recall this bit of advice given to another graduate a half-century ago.
I just want to say one word to you. Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
Plastics.
That must be a material sciences graduate. So let me just say that the work in material sciences that led to the development of plastics has contributed to many great advances. Things like disposable syringes, which have all but eliminated injection-related infections, and cochlear implants, which have helped so many of the deaf children I care about. But plastics have also had unintended consequences. This is Midway Island, right smack in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, 2,000 miles from the nearest continent and home to the largest population of albatrosses on the planet. And this is what their home looks like now, because much of our discarded plastics washes up on the shores of Midway Island. This problem needs to be fixed. Medical research has led to impressive declines in mortality rates for many forms of cancer. This is just one example. Now we must develop equally as effective interventions for the sensory and cognitive impairments that so often accompany aging. This problem needs to be fixed. And I could go on and on and on, but you get the picture. There are lots of problems that need fixing. So, My message to you today can be nothing short of that you need to go out and save the world. Now, you don't need to save the whole world, and you don't need to save it in every way it needs saving, but you need to bite off a substantial chunk, and you need to make a meaningful difference. And if that directive still seems too ostentatious and unattainable, let me show you something. Remember the goal I set for my own career of wanting to help deaf children learn spoken language? Well, watch this.
Do you play any sports?
Play some sports.
Yeah, what do you play any?
I like playing football. I like playing with football with my dad in the backyard of our house.
Good, that sounds like fun. Tell me how you play that game.
You have to get a football.
Okay.
And then what you do is try to beat the other teams by scoring a touchdown. The touchdown is at the end of the football field.
Of course, I'm not going to tell you I'm responsible for that outcome. That outcome is the product of work by an army of scientists, engineers, otologists, audiologists, teachers of the deaf, and parents, all of whom shared a common vision for deaf children. And I'm not going to tell you we're at the end of our journey, because even the best performing deaf children still face barriers to communication. And our biggest challenge still lies ahead, because the kinds of intensive intervention required for that outcome remain unavailable to most children who are born deaf. But the point is, when you set your sights high and work hard, you'll be surprised at what gets accomplished. Cardinal rule number 3, describe the future. I've got this one covered. Before long, you will be visited by an administrator. Perhaps a department chair, maybe a director of research, maybe a postdoc supervisor. This administrator will sit down with you and say, now, about that grant proposal. And that's a message you'll hear often. You will begin to think that your job is trolling for dollars for your institution. But that is not your job. Your job is to save the world. That same administrator will tell you that within the next year, you're expected to publish 3 papers as first or senior author in journals with impact factors of 4 or higher. That is not your job. Your job is to save the world. And that administrator knows that, but we all have to operate under the same constraints. Saving the world's expensive, so you're going to have to help foot the bill. And no discovery, no matter how big, matters unless you share it with others, so you're going to have to publish. But most importantly, there are lots of people claiming to be able to save the world. So as imperfect and pedestrian as these measures are, we need a way to separate the true contenders from the imposters. You need to make sure you end up in that first bucket. Cardinal rule number 4, offer sage advice. When I read this rule, my first instinct was simply to tell you not to make the same mistakes I've made. But then I realized that would lead to my having to list all those mistakes, and that would keep us all here far longer than any of us care to be. So I decided to boil down everything I learned from all those mistakes to 3 salient lessons. Pay attention to this part. Persevere. You might think it would be easy to save the world, that you just have to announce you're going to do so and everything would fall into place. But that's not the way it works. You're going to encounter challenges. Some of these challenges will be exogenous, others will be endogenous. The exogenous challenges arise pretty much from all of those pedestrian chores we all need to perform. Not just writing grants and publishing papers, but filling out requisitions for equipment or travel authorization forms, or responding to the IRB or the IACUC. It can all become discouraging, but don't let it. That is all just paperwork you need to complete for your journey. The endogenous challenges are actually the more serious ones. Before long, you will experience some success. You will publish papers, you'll be invited to give talks, and you'll get tenure. In short, you'll become comfortable. That's when it's easy to settle for getting halfway to saving the world, but don't. Just when you're getting comfortable, that's when you need to dig down, push through, and set a new short-term objective for your work. Reflect. It's often said that failure is part of success, and that's true. Similarly, it's said that when you fall down, you should get right back up and get right back in the race. Not so fast. When you fall down, stay down there a while. Figure out why you stumbled. Yes, some of the time it will be true that those individuals who actually criticize your work will be incapable of understanding it. But more often than not, they'll be perfectly reasonable colleagues who are in your corner and would like nothing more than to see you save the world, but think there are a few flaws in your plans. Take the time to consider their criticisms and adjust course as need be. Inspire. You're going to need help to achieve your goals. So inspire those around you who are capable of grasping and sharing your aspirations. Include people who are senior to you, because even though you are well prepared, questions will arise, and they can help answer those questions. Include people who are junior to you, because they have boundless energy and can continue your work when you're gone. So this brings us to cardinal rule number 5, finish big. In 1861, the first doctorate was awarded at Yale University. Since then, this degree has been conferred upon those individuals demonstrating the highest level of knowledge in their chosen field. Today, you join their ranks, the 3%. Only you in this room, are the brightest and the best prepared doctoral recipients of your generation. And that will make all the difference to your ability to achieve your goals. We expect you to set those goals high and work hard to achieve them. Yes, you will encounter obstacles along the way, but you're equipped to deal with them. And no, your life will not look like the lives of your friends from high school and college who chose other career paths. You will not go home every day at 5 o'clock or head to the beach every weekend. Instead, your rewards will be doled out over longer time spans, in years or even decades. And they will not be so tangible. Your best rewards will not come in the form of bonuses or plaques that bear your name, but in other, almost imperceptible ways. Depending on your field, your best reward might come when, one day in the future, you realize that habitats for our wildlife are cleaner, or you see that more of our elderly are enjoying those extra years in their lives because they're free of sensory and cognitive impairments. For me, my best rewards come when I hear deaf children talk about playing in their backyard. So today we celebrate the end of one long and hard journey for you. But more significantly, we find joy in helping to launch you on a new journey, one that promises to be long and hard, but oh so rewarding. I am quite certain that if a future version of you were here today, they would tell you, thank you for choosing this career path. For my part, after all these rules and lessons, the best I really can do is to tell you, congratulations, now get to work. Thank you.